this is proof right here, guys. If you're watching this, you will not meet nicer people. Whoop, I'm going to point up there and there. You will not meet nicer people.
Coming back to a show that I dearly love and admire. So thanks for having me.
It's like, that's Big Starklighter's homie. So how did you know? Because I'm a nerd.
I've placed information vital to the survival of the rebellion into the memory systems of this R2 unit.
But, I was doing my research, and Wedge was obviously a character that you had to use if you were going to do Rogue Squadrons.
What are you doing, C-3PO? I'm taking one last look at my friends. These aren't your friends.
Cassie and Jim on the beach, and people are like, no. I can literally hear people like, no.
It doesn't look like they're even hungry when they get out. They're not just like, did you bring a Snickers or something? There's no logic to it. And then later, when we haven't even talked about the Wilfred Brimley of it all.
I'm honored to be here. I'm also impressed that you got Zach Galifianakis as a guest tonight.
Because Darth Vader was the scariest thing that had ever happened to anybody, and this guy literally looks like the devil.
You don't do that. There is no drag.
What's the big question people have? Like, what's the thing everybody's wondering about? What's the thing I don't understand? What would I want to hear?
The galaxy isn't growing to push people out. It's growing to let more people come in and find their love so that it's able to continue and create this connective tissue.
It's good to know that people still love it out there, and that the people who made it are all proud and passionate about it and willing to come back.
It was a mess, dude. I had to wear a patch for a bit. We went to see Star Wars that night because I said, no, I'm going. We have to go. And I went to see Star Wars with a huge thing on my eye.
I like to denote people as daddies from time to time.
Okay.
And I believe that you are a certified daddy. Like Pedro Pascal's a daddy. Like,
right.
Certified daddy.
I have had the best time ever on Around the Galaxy. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome to Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am one of your hosts, Pete Fletcher. I am joined by my good friend, Nick Milkey. Nick, how are you doing today? You are muted.
To borrow a phrase, I am grateful as well. I'm grateful for the opportunity to hang out on this Saturday afternoon and have this amazing conversation with an amazing guest. I'm very, very excited.
I, too, am excited. If you're watching us live, thank you very much. That means you're an Around the Galaxy streaming Star Wars Network patron. Thank you so much for hanging out. We have such a great guest today that I'm not even going to get hung up on going into deep detail because you're going to recognize her as soon as you see her. We are lucky to be joined by Debra Wilson, who we know as Cere Junda from Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, but we also know her from so many other places. Here she is, Debra Wilson.
Hi,
Debra.
everybody.
Hello. How are you doing? So good to see you.
I'm blessed. I'm so blessed. I'm grateful. It's all good. It always is.
It's so great. It's so great that you could join us. We really appreciate it. And so this is a Star Wars fan talk show. I was normally we have people introduce themselves, but I think if anybody has ever played a video game since 2002, I think is how long you've been doing video games for. They've heard you, they've seen you. Mad TV.
I've been doing a little bit longer than that. In fact,
has it been longer than that?
Yeah. But there are things that people probably would not recognize. I've had a couple of people who obviously were into what I did at an early period that asked me about like the very first thing that I did, and they knew what it was and asked me about the character and how I approached it. I thought it was very interesting and very cool.
Yeah. Well, I was telling Nick, and I remember when I played Jedi Fallen Order the first time. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, "That's Oprah from Mad TV." Holy cow! And then, but the amazing thing, and this speaks volumes about you as an actor, what you bring to it. Like in a moment, I was like, "Okay, no, that was Oprah from Mad TV. Now it's this great character that I'm so excited to be playing with." So, before we get too deep into it, maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with Star Wars. Do you remember seeing it for the first time as a kid? And
I wasn't a kid. I'm 60 years old.
Okay.
So when I'm 60. So when I saw Star Wars, I was already in high school.
Okay.
In 1977. And it spoke to me spiritually. It was almost as if God said, I want you to see this because this is going to tailor your life in certain ways, and you're going to connect to it on a spiritual level. And I'm going to open your heart and your mind through this channel. And Star Wars was that spiritual channel for me. Everything that you see that I am, that I embody in my spirituality and my faith in God came through Star Wars, regardless of church and regardless of growing up in a church. I had moved away from that. I didn't move away fully from the idea of a God, but I did move away from the way it was represented in a Christian church, and particularly the Christian church that I grew up in, because I saw a lot of hypocrisy and things going on and the politics of things. And at a young age, that made an impression that where is God in the middle of all of that? And I felt like I didn't have that connection. I saw everybody else have these connections, and I didn't know if those connections were fake or real. And then those who did claim to have those real connections were also people who would talk behind your back and be mean and say hurtful things to others right in front of children. And so for me, I thought, okay, well, they're faking that relationship. And if they're faking that relationship in that moment as a child, then is there really a God? Or you're having this reverie and then letting that reverie and that reality and that truth of God within you go away for the three-dimensional world, for you to negotiate your integrity in the three-dimensional world. So I was confused by that, and I left the church, and I left religion in general. And in 1977, Star Wars brought me back. It brought me back to the idea and the concept and the truth and reality of compassion, service, self-sacrifice. Those are the three big things: compassion, service, and self-sacrifice. And it was huge. And then I can relate that to Jesus Christ as a figure, as an epic historical figure, not it's a biblical figure, but an epic historical figure. And I went, wow, here for a greater cause, here to have your life have a purpose for generations to come, and to have a space of the psychic energy world that goes beyond you, the metaphysical world, to have an overstanding, so to speak, of that metaphysical world that exists without you seeing it. Because the only ones that can really see it and work through it and move through it are those on that spiritual level. It takes that higher space and that higher plane of existence within the three-dimensional realm to see the realm beyond that, because you discipline yourself like a Christ, like a Luke Skywalker. You discipline yourself, Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
Right.
As Obi-Wan said. And so, with the blast shield down, I can't see anything. How am I supposed to fight? Because again, he's three-dimensional.
Right.
And now Obi-Wan is saying, you're letting go of your instinct because you're expecting this all to do, but this will fail you. These two connected together won't.
Right. And we talk a lot about how there's this, for some reason, Star Wars, and I mean the fact that there's 1,000 Star Wars podcasts, they're still popular, and it's not just because there's Disney money behind it. That doesn't hurt, but I think as a story, it's still there, and it's got to be. I always ask, and Nick and I always ask, what is it about Star Wars that makes that connection? And I think you hit on to something there, because it doesn't matter what your traditional religious perspective is. There's something in that story, at least that original trilogy to start with, that kind of captures that sort of feeling, right?
Oh, absolutely. And more so than that, it's universal, because if you think about it, the Jedi Order are like monks. They're like fighting monks, and they're fighting for a greater cause. They're willing to lay down their life. Obi-Wan did it. And when he did, he laid down his physical life.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And so, and then it's also the story of redemption. Anakin gets redemption. He's forgiven. He gets redemption because he forgives himself.
Right.
And so it's really a powerful story. And every generation is going to go through a struggle, no matter what. In the three-dimensional world on this planet, every generation goes through a struggle. And we get a chance to see ourselves in those who are going through a struggle, but fighting through it anyway, fighting for something larger, fighting against the empire, which could be the government, which could be corruption, which could be injustice, And so it's fighting against that and trusting that there is a way to make it through, and that there are others as well, that there is an order. And people are finding their orders. People are finding their revelation in self-love and self-acceptance. We're hearing more about the LGBTQI community, QIA community, the Black Lives Matter movement, but all of those things had to come through a struggle. They had to come through the violence. They had to come through others choosing to oppress that experience, just like the empire. And so these dominant factors in society are like the dominance of the empire. And so people are seeing this and will always see this for generations and generations and generations beyond us in this franchise, because it is the story. Everything is a storyteller. Everything is a story. Everything is a story. And so I've moved beyond the idea and the concept spiritually of voiceover work, because it is really storytelling. And primordial man, from the beginning of time, the dawning of humankind, always told a story because of its experiences. Even if they didn't speak, they wrote, they grunted, they cave drawings. Everything is about a story of life, a historical documentation of life. And so as we tell our experiences, I realized that it was time for me to make a transmutation from voiceover into the storytelling realm, because with voiceover, yes, you can get hired. With storytelling, that takes you a level beyond that, because it means the story came before you and you humble yourself to the story. So as you continue to tell that story in that place, you are willing to create a sacrifice emotionally and spiritually, and make sure that all of you, every fiber of your being and every experience that you had blends with that. So you're being as honest and sincere as possible, no pun intended, but sincere as possible, and that you are willing to cut yourself open and tell your pain, your sorrow, your sadness, your suffering, and your celebration in it. Otherwise, it's just voiceover, and you can just use your voice all you like. But to tell that story, you have to start and begin and end with your heart.
Absolutely. And I want to tag on to that for a minute, because you hit on a point that I was thinking about coming into this interview. Because you've worked on so many video games, you have worked in the prep questions that I sent to Pete, I wrote, you've worked on literally anything somebody can be a fan of. Marvel, DC, Star Wars, Star Trek, Disney, and the list goes on and on and on. That's literally just the surface. But I want to touch on this idea of video games as storytelling, because that is a more modern version. We've had TV for years. We've had movies for decades. We've had all these other things. But as video games continue to develop, they become just as powerful as of a tool to tell a story as any of these other mediums that we've had.
They always have. Here's the thing. They always have. It's just that game developers are now catching on and evolving that story with cinematics, because video games have always been popular. However, the cinematics now are becoming more advanced and more prominent in the story, so that people are seeing an aspect of themselves other than first person shooter games. Because RPG games have always been popular, because you get a chance to play as them and have these conversations and switch up what you want to answer and how you respond and how they respond based on that. It's always been there. It's just that now we are having more of an experience of ourselves in it, because game developers are paying attention to why people are going to these games and what they're getting out of these games in order to properly develop them for those fans. And that's exactly what's happening. I mean, the cinematics now are amazing that they put it in there. And those who are really in it are realize that, they have to bring their A game as an actor. It's not just body motion anymore. In fact, we don't even call it mocap in the business. It's PCAP, which is performance capture, because motion is just the movement. Now, there still is motion in certain things, because I just finished I'm still working on it. It hasn't been released, but it's supposed to be released this May. And that is, I'm Amanda Waller in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
Yep.
Okay. So while I'm doing all the voice, Rocksteady, which is over in the UK, what they did is originally is I went over so that they can do the capture of my face and my body and everything that way and render that. Once they did that and had all that, they didn't have need for me to go over to the UK anymore. I would do all the voice work, and they would hire someone to do all the body motion. So that is that in and of itself, for all intents and purposes, that is motion capture.
Right. Sure.
Because
that makes a lot of sense.
But PCAP is when you're doing the
Mhm.
full performance. You've got your voice, you've got your body, and everything comes together. And that's quite a deal. I have to admit, it's
Well,
quite a
and
deal because it requires and requests that you show up in the most sincere and honest way. It's looking for authenticity, and those who are casting for stuff like
Mhm.
that want that type of authenticity. And so these games that are continuing to flourish and be big from chapter to chapter, now they're calling them series. You know, we get this
Yep.
episode and this episode now because it is as epic as a television series, and it is as epic as the next sequel to a movie. It's that big. It's that big and
Okay.
requires all of that. So the storytelling has always been there. It's just that it's evolving so that people can really and truly see themselves, immerse themselves in a way that says, I'm in this game and I see myself. I see who I am and what I want to be. In troubled times, I am this. When shit hits the fan, I am this. When I'm
Right.
having issues and I want to let all that go, I am here.
Yep.
I am that superhero. Because you have to ask yourself,
Mhm.
why is in today's society is Marvel at the top of their game in DC? Why are metahumans and the whole idea of superheroes so popular in the latter part of the 20th century and into the 20th? I mean, it's just boom, boom, boom. Because people want to see a hero in themselves, something that is not only ordinary, but extraordinary or extraordinary, where they can take control where they can in their real life sometimes. And it's
Absolutely.
just
Well,
really,
and I
really
want
popular.
no doubt. And I want to ask this question because you do talk about, and especially along the lines of performance capture, I think that's such a great way to look at that and how that fits in. And one example that stands out for me was when Clone Wars Season 7 came out. And towards the end of that, we get the lightsaber fight between Darth Maul and Ahsoka. And we know that Ray Park came in and he and Lauren Mary Kim wore those mocap suits so that they could do the fight. And then they animated over it. And so it was performance on a lot of levels. Ray Park was Darth Maul and, the Phantom Menace. But you could see, like you're saying, I could tell that was him when I watched the animated version because there were moves that they animated Maul doing that I was like, no, I've seen Ray Park do that on an Instagram video when he's working out in his garage. And it captured that same performance. And I think that's really, really fascinating that it moves not just from his fighting motion to a performance because we recognize those moves from the Phantom Menace as well. It was a part of the performance that he gave then and now. So the question for you is, covering such a wide range of characters, to play an Amanda Waller, to play Cere Junda, and we'll use Cere as an example because we're a Star Wars podcast and we know that there's more Cere coming out in March with Jedi Survivor. Talk to us about the prep work to embody Cere Junda, to embody a character, to put yourself fully into that. What does it take for you to be able to do that performance?
The main thing it takes is authenticity and pulling every aspect from my emotional life and the things that I've been through. Because I've been through some things. She is the closest of all the people. I don't call her a character. She is the closest of all the people that I've ever embodied that is a soulmate to me. She is a soulmate energy in pretty much every aspect of our lives together. We're very much soulmated. So it was easy to be able to draw on my own stuff, but at the same time, very painful to have to draw on my own stuff. Stuff I had never told people about and stuff I knew that I had to use that was a fear or a shame or a something that happened in my life and an experience in which I went, I'm going to bury this. And then I couldn't bury it for that. And after I performed that, after I brought that out, then once it was done, once a particular scene in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was shot, then I was able to cry and confess where that came from. And I was able to tell my director, the brilliant and amazing, and my friend and my mentor, and really my everything, Tom Keegan, who's a brilliant director. If you don't know him, he's a prolific director, but he's also a prolific human being. And the way he directs will pull things from you and get the best performances. So if you find a kinship with Cere Junda, it's because he is a conductor of an orchestra that plays every one of my notes so that everyone gets something.
Wow, that's amazing.
Tom Keegan, he is amazing and he is something.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's so interesting to hear you talking about, and playing off what Nick was just talking a little bit about too, is that performance. I have to ask a technical question because I think about it every time I see a picture of somebody like yourself in the mocap or the performance cap situation. How long does it take you to get past the camera in your face, the dots on your all over you, and the tight suit to be able to? And I know as an actor, you could work in any environment, but is that? I mean, now it's probably second nature to you because you're so prolific in the number of games that you're a part of. But is it difficult to get through that? And sometimes working with people who are new to it, does it take a while to kind of get through that?
I got in pretty quickly. It was seconds, minutes, and I'll tell you why. Because the first thing I ever did was the original Avatar. Okay. And so doing mocap on that for 3 months, and never doing mocap before, I turned the project down because 3 times I turned it down on the phone 3 times, and they were like, Jim, they called him Jim. I didn't call him no Jim. I don't know well enough to call him Jim. He said, Jim wants you on the project. Jim wants you on the project. And I was like, I've never done mocap. I don't know anything about it. He's probably looking for somebody else. It ain't me. And they're like, yeah, because you modeled for Neytiri at Stan Winston Studios. They're like, right, because I modeled for that. So I was the prototype of the Nav-E of Zoe Saldana.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all, and they took my photos and they rendered it. They CGI'd them. And then they sent them to, James Cameron. And he was like, all right, I see this energy. I can tell. You can feel that energy. Because even when I went in to just model, I was doing it for fun. There was no money involved. It wasn't a booking. It wasn't anything like that. A friend of mine was working there. When I was married, my stepson, who still is my kid, I call him my kid Quinn, was coming into town. I wanted to impress him. I said, listen, can we take you out to lunch? But before we take you out to lunch, can we walk through the studio and see everything that is prolific about what Stan Winston did, from the Terminator to, to Aliens to, you name it, Predator. And so he had them all in his office, and it was like, and that was just like the conference room. And then we walked into the actual studio space where people were building stuff. And it was like the most amazing thing for me, let alone him.
Sure.
And so people who were working on this project at the time, it was called 880. They had signed a waiver and a non-disclosure agreement to say that you can't even tell the people that are working in the same studio that are working on other projects about this. So you work alongside them, but if they're not working on 880, you don't tell anyone at at Stan Winston Studios what this is. So people at Stan Winston were like, we don't know. We can't even know what it is. No, you can't. And so that's how top secret it was. They had hired models. It just didn't work out because they weren't actors. They were just models. Right. So they knew how to stand there and look pretty, but they didn't know how to look like Nav-E. And so for me, it was just, I love having an experience. Again, someone's asking me to be a part of a storytelling. So this is a physical storytelling. So I said, absolutely. So I said, okay, tell me about this. They said, it's a cat-like, tall, languid. She is a warrior, and she is a very powerful and influential leader of her tribe. They live on a different planet that represents nature and earth and beauty. And their God is this nature form, and because it's alive, they get history from it. Their ancestors are in everything. And I said, okay, can I take off my clothes? Because if I don't want to feel clothes because it feels too human. And they were like, okay. So I took off my clothes. I also played didgeridoo, and at one point I brought my didge, played with my feet instead because it's a tribal instrument from the Aboriginals, and I just wanted to really get that feeling sensation. And they said, here's what we're going to do. We have this green screen behind you, and we are going to shoot you. But when we need you to stop and freeze because of the method we're using with these cameras. I said, okay. So I asked them to let me move around and create this space and create what I see, create what I smell, create the wind, create the atmosphere, the temperature, the air, everything, the breeze, the smell of animal dung, or the smell of plants, or the smell of everything, the smell of the water. And when I can create that in my third eye, I would move around this planet, and then I would freeze. And I said, whenever I freeze, then I'm ready. So they just let me take my time and do my thing and move around and explore and look. And then I would freeze and they would take pictures. And then they gave one particular picture to James Cameron. He goes, that's it. I want her here. And that's how it started for me in mocap. In fact, when James Cameron did a coffee table book called The Art of Avatar, in the centerfold was that picture.
Oh, wow.
You know, was that picture. So it was really beautiful. So at that point, it was just supposed to be an influence, you know, an opportunity for inspiration. But when you let all that go to tell this one story, you never know how someone else is tied and segued to the rest of the story. Because again, you have to be humble to tell that part of the story, but know that that story came before you and it will come after you. So when I let it go, the thing that came after me came back and said, we want you a part of the story that's continuing right now when we do this, when we shoot this. And so putting on this suit and everything like that, it was an experience. So I accept the experience. And there are other people there who have been already working on it. So it was really, really wonderful to meet, you know, Sam Water, can't think of his last name. Sam.
Yeah, the guy who plays. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yes, Sam Waters. I was about to say Sam Waterston. You know, Sam Waterston's an older actor, but Zoe Saldana, and Sam. I'll just say Sam, and they were brilliant and amazing. And so doing it was not as difficult, only because when you start to embody that space, it's almost as if you have to let this stuff go.
Sure.
They'll tell you the technical things. They'll give you all the technical direction. That's it. Here's what you have on. Here's what you do. And you know it's there, but you don't pay attention to it because as this Nav-E, your eyes are still creating that environment and being there and following everyone else and being a part of a tribe and, you know, and all of these things. And so those things begin to disappear because you already know technically here, technically this, technically that. And then you let all that stuff go, you know? And so in those scenes where there are stuff where you're close to somebody, you realize that if they, in their HMC, which is their head mounted camera, a lot of times they're made with these lights. So what happens is it's a head mounted cam and it comes out like this. And there's a camera and there are 4 LED lights that surround it. So when those lights go on, it's illuminating the markers on your face. And so when those lights come on, even though it's here, it doesn't block your eyes because your eyes will your eye line will be here.
Right.
So you can look below and above and everything else. And so that camera is meant to move with your head, but never block your eyes like this. It's always slightly here. And it's just, it's amazing. I think the most challenging thing for me in motion capture and or rather performance capture is that fucking thing can hurt your head because it sits on and they have to put it on. Why? Because what ends up happening is if it shifts too much, then the markers are misaligned.
Yep.
And so it doesn't, you know, everything is not able to be captured immediately.
Right.
You know, they've got to check your markers. If a marker is out of place, camera can't read it.
Right. Right.
So there are all those technical things. So it's their responsibility to make sure it doesn't move, but so much, but still gives that range of motion and captures as much as possible and renders. And Weta was doing it, which is they're out of New Zealand. They are they're a computer motion capture company that renders all of the data.
Right.
And they were there. And Weta does a lot with, I think the company belongs to
Peter Jackson, right?
Yes.
Peter Jackson, yeah.
Peter Jackson. And it was just stunning to see how it works. And did you know that performance capture and all of that really comes from the medical profession? Because it was used, all of that technology in its infancy was used in the medical profession to see bone misalignment and hips and joints and walking and I
didn't know that, but it makes all the sense in the world.
We've got this down to a science now.
Literally.
You're inspired by it. Literally. Literally.
Yeah.
Well, you were saying before about, and I think it's so interesting to take technology and everything you talked about everything personal that you brought with you into Cere, into Jedi Fallen Order, and coming up in Survivor. Now, there's a book that's coming out between called Jedi Battle Scars. How does that impact? Because I believe Cere's in the book. It's not out yet, but I'm pretty sure she is. How does that impact? Do you read those things, or do you just say, you know what? I appreciate that they're writing stories about the character, because it sounds like Cere is so personal to you. Did you read that, and how did you prepare for going into Survivor, coming back to this character?
I don't know anything about that book, and I think that's going to be amazing and exquisite and lovely that people are inspired enough to continue to broaden her character based on her past and who she might be in the future. I think that's amazing, and I'm humbled by it. Marvel did a 5 comic book series with Cere Junda, and in fact, they took a picture off the internet and used it. And interestingly enough, the young Cere has my dreadlocks, because I had dreadlocks for 25 years. I had them down to my waist, and they took a picture from a red carpet that I had done and how I had my dreadlocks up. And they used that on the cover. So
that's awesome.
It was really fascinating to see, a rendition of my dreadlocks, and then, my actual face rendered. Not, it wasn't CGI'd. It was a picture that they took from a photo. Right. And so it's flattering to me. It's flattering to me. And so I'm interested more than anything else. And I'm very curious, enthusiastic about the story that she is and was and will be from someone else's perspective.
Yeah. I'm sure that's interesting. Now, how did
life, I should say.
Right. Because as you said, she's not a character, and that's I love that perspective, and it because it brings it more to life, and I think that's the really cool thing about video games. We were talking before about video games as a way to tell stories. Now, you're with them for 40 plus hours. You are spending a lot of time with
stories. That's what they are.
Yeah.
We do this, but if we have to look at the larger picture, we get this. But in order to get to this, there has to be a story. Yep. And there has to be a reason and a purpose. So the reason and the purpose is the story in and of itself. Even if it's just your story. Right. Yep. Even if it's just your story of you wanting to do this, there's a story. There is no such thing that isn't a story. Every experience is a story. Then having the experience, telling it from their perspective as just the player, that's already their story immersed in this story. Why they want to do it, why they enjoy it. Why is this important for them? Or why is this their release? Why is this their stress relief? So it's already a story. It's already a story if you think about it on the larger scale.
How did you prepare to come back to this character? Because it sounds like you put, it's so funny. Ryan Johnson talks about how when he finished The Last Jedi, he left it all on the table. He was like, there's nothing left. We finished the story. Yeah, we know there was going to be an episode 9, but my story was done. It sounds like you leave it all out there for a character, no matter what you're doing. How did you prepare to come back for Survivor and to come back to this character?
The same thing. Cere's never left me. Again, we have such a kinship. We're on such a level. We're such soulmates that her being older and me being older was exactly where we were meant to be. So that alignment was not a challenge at all. More than anything else, it was a joy to watch the story develop, because it changed over a period of time. So while we were even shooting that, the story was always evolving. It was like, we're not going to need you this day. We're going to go dark that day, because they're always evolving what they wanted out of it. And what they ended up with while they were still shooting it is pretty prolific, I have to say. And I'm extremely proud of it. I'm extremely proud of where the characters go and what becomes of them. It is, I think, more intense than the first one. It's extremely more intense. But it's also a beautiful reunion at the same time. But the story is even more intense. It ups it. It ups it in a way. This story this game is going to be more prolific than the first, in my opinion. More prolific in the first. So the preparation simply was to just get back into that space with the people I love as Debra, and Cere is already there with me. You know what I'm saying? A lot of actors will say, I become the character. And I say, for me, I don't agree. It's not the way I work. And the reason I say I don't become the character is because if I do, then I give myself up. Then I'm not telling the story that belongs to me. The emotional story, the psychological story, the painful story, the joyful story, because those stories have to exist in me as the foundation and the fabric. So I don't become the character. Those people live through me. I'm allowing them to go, I am your vessel. Use me, possess me, so to speak. Because you're using my emotions, you're using my tears, you're using my vocal cords, you're using everything, you're using my heart, you're using my experiences.
Wow.
Because your experiences are a kinship to mine, but yours at the end of the day will end up on paper. Mine end up on actual experiences. So if we blend these together, I can take the experiences that were on your paper and make sure that I tell them with every fiber of my being.
Right.
Regardless of how painful, I will cut my heart open to do that. And therefore, I don't become you. You live here in me, and I will let you possess me and use my body and my heart and my mind and my experiences as your vessel to tell your story.
That's amazing.
Phenomenal. And so when you come back to this character, I know this game has been in development, of course, for several years, certainly on the success of Fallen Order in the first one. Was some of this work on this one done during COVID? Was it done in isolation? Or
no, you can't do something like this in isolation. It's not possible. You have to be in a volume. The volume is where you actually shoot. Because you have all these cameras around you from the ceiling to the sides, because it captures everything 360. So it is mandatory and necessary. Of course, COVID protocols have been set up from the early beginning, because when everything shut down, the one thing that didn't shut down was voiceover. People are like, look, we got to work, and a lot of people had a home studio to begin with.
Correct.
And so if you had a home studio, you worked. If you didn't, you were out.
Ahead of the game. That's right.
If you didn't, you were out. And there were people that were like, look, if you don't have a home studio, we're going to replace you, because we got to keep this going. And so guess whose black ass got a home studio real fast? Yes, I did. And I had friends who were like, okay, we've got home studios. We hook you up. We'll show you what to do. You buy this, you buy this, you buy this. And voila. Within a week, I had a home studio. And so I kept working and working and working. And now I'm not, and of course, with agency protocols too, nobody was going into the office to record their auditions. I would always go to my voiceover agency to record audition in their booth. And then when that went away, I was like, well, great. Now I've got my home booth. In fact, I do a lot of shows from here. I do shows for Nickelodeon from here. I do shows for not necessarily Disney, but Nickelodeon. I do shows for NBC. I do NBC promos from here. I am the game show announcer on The Weakest Link for NBC with Jane Lynch.
Yep.
And cool. I do that from home. I get out of my bed naked and record 6 episodes and go back to sleep. You know what I'm saying? And also on ABC, Steve Harvey has a judge show, and I'm the court announcer on that. I do that from my bedroom. I do about 6 or 7 episodes. So within a season, if there are 18 to 22 episodes in a season, if they get picked up and it does well, I can do that in 4 days, because we'll do about 3 episodes, 3 to 5 episodes, or maybe 6 episodes. With Weakest Link, it's about 6 episodes a day.
Yeah, sure.
Wow.
Part of my asking the question about if it was done in isolation, and I'm glad it's not, because you mentioned talking about showing up as Debra, presenting yourself, and then Cere comes along with you. So I imagine you're working with Cameron Monaghan, you're working with Daniel Roebuck, who is Grease. Yeah, Monaghan, I'm sorry. Being with those other actors and being able to work in that space together, that has to also fuel what you're able to bring to these characters, because like you said, there's a family dynamic there. Speak to that just for a second, if you can.
You never, when you're doing motion capture, it's never just you. If it were film, I get it, because everybody's scheduling. Most of those people are very well known, and I get that. But for something like this, especially a video game project, that interaction is necessary, because it is emotional, it is drawing. And when you have a camera on your face, it's capturing every sincere moment, but also the ones that aren't. And all of those expressions are necessary, because they come through and evoked by the interaction of things. And it's really, really powerful and important, because it is theater. It is the same as if you were working on a film. It is no different. There is no echelon. Well, with film work. Yeah, right. But here's the thing with film work. It's easier, because now you have everything built up around you. You've got the sets, you've got the lighting, you've got the costumes, you've got the makeup, you've got the wardrobe, you've got the set decoration. So everything to support the space that you're in. When you're in a volume, it's all coming from your third eye. It's all coming from you trusting and believing that it exists. It's not playing pretend. It's allowing these things to become real for you. So I think the work has a different dynamic that requires and requests of you to stay focused in a different way.
It's
in a more powerful way.
And we've seen it, I think, especially in light of some of the high quality streaming shows. I think the layers of, you're a movie actor and you're a TV actor, and now you're just a good actor, right? That's and you're going to get, because it doesn't, your Oscar winners are in video games and streaming shows have bigger budgets than major motion pictures. So
yeah,
they just need good people, and that sounds like where you've been going with it. That's amazing.
That's exactly where, and thank you. That's exactly what it is. And it doesn't matter even if it's voiceover. Voiceover for me is the same thing without the mocap suit.
Sure.
The same
thing. Speaking of good people, I have a question I have to ask you, and I have to ask you this question because it was teased when you left me a voicemail on my phone last week. It was teased when I spoke to you on the phone last week. Rumor has it that there's a story about how you used the Force to will Mark Hamill into your life.
Yes, that is not a rumor.
We
that
will
is the
not.
Truth, and Mark Hamill will tell you the same.
We will not let you off this podcast without hearing that story. So the floor is certainly yours.
Okay. I'm a Black woman, so I know how to make a short story long. I told you about in 1977, I was in high school. In fact, I was going to the High School of Performing Arts in New York City. I'm from New York.
Okay.
I went to go see this film. My older sister had already gone to see it, and she was like, "Oh, it's so funny, and you have to see it. And these characters." That was her perspective. It was just fun, and it was funny, and it was silly, and she loved Han Solo and all the lines. And she would tell me these things, but for me, it was a collection of her these moments, but they were fragmented. So I was like, I have to go see this. And when I did, that's when God was like, here we go. I want you here in this space because I've been watching you. I have my eye on you. I have my eye on everybody. You know, everyone is called, but few answer. And so I went, wow, Mark Hamill, I need to find out about this man because what he gave to this there's an innate expression and experience in me that is now a part of my being. It's now a part of the fiber of my being. And now it's up for me to explore that. It's almost like having a new limb. Now, how do you use it? You know, you have a new heart, you've been given a new kidney. And now how do you take care of it? How do you, how you allow it to function within your space? And so I said, Mark Hamill is responsible for this. As playing Luke Skywalker, I need to find out more. So I started buying every magazine I could. I started reading everything about him that I could. I started finding out everything about his personal life in general, and started researching and watching stuff that he did when he was younger, and finding out about his accident, and finding out that he went to Yokohama High School in Japan, and finding out and seeing the Texas Whalers that he did, which is an NBC pilot with Jack Elam, and how because of his collision, a car accident where his nose was swiped from his face, that it was given to Grant Goodeve, who did 8 is Enough, who was the oldest brother on 8 is Enough. Older series, you may not know it.
I know.
Okay, you do?
Yeah. The spirit is white, Deborah. The spirit is white.
But I didn't know if the age was. I didn't know if the age was.
It's all good.
And so I found out as much as possible. And then I found out that he was on Broadway in The Elephant Man. I also found out that he loves comic books, and there was a comic book store on the upper West Side that he would always go to. So I would always go to the comic book store and see if he was ever going to be there. And then I would ask the owner about him coming in. Yeah, he comes in pretty regularly, buys some comics, blah, 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 blah. I would stare outside of the theater where the Elephant Man was playing and just look at these giant posters of him from various scenes of it. And I just knew one day, at that point for me, it was, I want to meet him. Star Wars was the first time I said, I want to be in this business. And so in 1977, the other thing, there are catalysts that come up. In 1977, the other catalyst was Whoopi Goldberg's one-woman show. I had no idea who Whoopi Goldberg was. I'd never seen her before, but I was at somebody's home and they were braiding my hair. They were cornrowing my hair. And she said, it's going to take me another hour and a half. You want to watch TV? She had HBO at that time when it was just called Home Box Office.
Correct.
There was a special on, and it was Whoopi Goldberg's one-woman show. And when I saw her, that was that same expression, that same feeling. And that's when I said, when I see an image of a Black woman with a Broadway show doing all of these characters, that's when I knew I was going to be in this business. So Star Wars and Mark Hamill was the jump off point that said, I want to be in this business. And Whoopi Goldberg was the jump off point that said, I'm going to be in this business. And the catalyst of the two started building this destiny that I had yet to know. When I saw Star Wars, the first thing I knew was I'm going to have to go through a lot of struggle, because I felt like this story innately was going to be an expression of my life, that there is going to be a struggle ahead on every level, and a personal struggle. In The Empire Strikes Back, when he goes into the cave and he thinks he has destroyed Vader, and the mask blows apart and he sees an image of himself, that he's fighting himself. So I knew that I would have to go through those things, that there was going to be a turn of events in my struggle where I was going to have to face myself. And it was going to be painful and frightening. So I knew all of those, or I believed all of those things were possible, but I also knew that there was a force greater than myself that loved me and is building the make and measure of my character and who I'm meant to be, and that these struggles will then support me. In other words, if it's all going to be shit at one point, the force, God, is saying, it's only there for your greater good to recognize that I created you to be minerals in the first place. And when you put minerals and shit together, you get fertilizer. And so I end up, we're going to fast forward. I end up on Mad TV, and you're getting all these guest stars. And I go to the producers and I say, Mark Hamill, Mark Hamill, Mark Hamill, Mark Hamill, Star Wars, Star Wars. Because every interview I did for Fox at that point was how I got into this, why I got into this. So of course, Whoopi Goldberg was a huge integral part of that. Sure. And then I auditioned for Mad TV as her as one of my celebrity impressions. And I talked about Star Wars and Mark Hamill because I knew, that was my entrance point, with something that was a catalyst within that performance, and with Mark Hamill for that. And so Mark Hamill, Mark Hamill, Mark Hamill, Mark Hamill. At that time, it was a new show. It was an upstart, and Fox was putting on everybody as a guest star that was on a brand new pilot for Fox, or a brand new series for Fox, or anything that did well, Party of Five.
Lots of corporate synergy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that. And so Mark Hamill wasn't relative to any of that. So they were like, nope. Our producers were like, nope. Not relevant enough for what we're doing. We're young, we're hip, we're fun, we're crazy. Nope. And here's how this happened. Oh, wait, let me backtrack. The most important part of the story, still in New York, working for City of New York Parks and Recreation. I find out that Mark Hamill will be at the Warner Brothers Studio store on Fifth Avenue, signing his stills as the Joker, because at that point, Batman, the animated series, had come out. Mark Hamill's career had moved more from in front of camera to voiceover. Right. Which was also, if you think about it, remember how I said from the very beginning, that same. So we're now, even now, when I think about it, that's the synergy where I'm moving from on camera to voiceover, predominantly.
Right.
Yep. And so I told my supervisor, this is part of my destiny, that I need to go. And I know that me walking out of work in the middle of the day is definitely worth summarily firing me. So it's all right if you need to do that. I trust that you'll do the job that you're meant to do, and it's okay, because I will have deserved that. But I'm going. I'm leaving work right now, and I'm going. This is a part of something larger and greater than me. And it's okay that you don't understand that, because I know it doesn't make sense to you, but it makes all the sense in the world to me, and I'm going to do this. I think my passion and my I was so determined. I think in that determination, it was like, you know what? I'm going to step out of your way and do that. You'll make that time up, because I see in your eyes how much this means to you and how important this is. So you go and do what you have to do. And I can tell that it's not BS, that you're just trying to get out of work. I can see, I can feel that from you. So go and do what you need to do. I did. Now, there was a long line. And in that line, you were told, Do not mention anything about the Star Wars universe. That's Lucasfilm Limited. That has nothing to do with Warner Brothers. Don't talk about it.
Right.
Now, if you want to get ahead of the line, you can buy one of the stills. It's beautifully framed. They're $250 each, and they're numbered and they're signed. And you can take your still up to where it is. Mark Hamill will stand on one side, you will stand on the other. You'll take a picture together, and that will be it. But you can't get on that line, so you pay $250.
Right.
And at that time, I was making maybe $32,000 a year. And so I was like, okay, that's a lot of money for me.
It's a big
to spend
chunk.
in one
Yeah.
swoop for a picture. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this because I don't want to wait on this line, and I really, really want to meet him. So I buy the still. I get the receipt. The receipt is your proof to stand in that line. And again, even in that line, they said, no, Mark Hamill, no, Star Wars, no. So eventually, it's my time to get to the front, and I see him right in front of me. And I needed to just look at him. And all of a sudden, I couldn't speak. And I didn't know what was going on. I realized that I was hyperventilating. And all I can say in that hyperventilation was Star Wars, Skywalker. So I'm trying to now because I'm not able to breathe properly. I'm not letting myself breathe properly. I'm not taking enough oxygen. And I'm talking about Star Wars, Jedi, Luke Skywalker, and all of that coming up. And I'm like, I'm crying because now I'm scared because I can't control my breath. And then the panic sets in.
Right.
Tears are rolling. The panic sets in. He goes, get a chair. Someone get a chair right now. Sit down, calm down. Guards are around. Security's around. He's like, leave her. Just give her some room. I'll give her some air. Okay. Hey, calm down. You okay? Okay. It's okay. And I'm calm down. And I'm breathing. He says, okay, just get back to normal here. What is your name? You know, my name is Debra Wilson. Okay. Calm down, Debra. Okay. So you came to see, you came here to see, right? And so he's trying to get me back to this normalcy, like a conversation. And I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, so good. So hi, I'm Mark. Yes, nice to meet you, Debra. You're gonna be okay. Okay, would someone get her a glass of water, please? And here's some water and drink. Tell me, what were you trying to say? I unleash a fucking Star Wars from holy hell, and I am just going on. And I'm telling him about this catalyst, this spiritual catalyst, and how the Force is drawing me to him. And I said, listen, I know I sound crazy. I know I may sound like a lunatic, but I am telling you, and I'm swearing to you on my entire life with every fiber of my being that I'm not a lunatic. And that this catalyst is taking place for me as the Force. And at that time, I was doing some improv in New York. My background is improv, so I was doing some improv. And he goes, okay. And I said, I just knew that I was meant to connect with you, not romantically or anything like that, but I knew that when I saw Star Wars, there was going to be a kinship in the evolutionary process of my own experiences personally. And that what you did as Luke Skywalker, and I said, I don't confuse the two. You're not Luke Skywalker.
Right.
I've come through the acting, I went through the acting stuff already. So I know better. But what your performance is, the organicness, the naturalness of it, what you brought as Mark Hamill, the enthusiasm, I got a chance to see you and not just a character you created. You're not different from Luke Skywalker in that terms, which is hence how I evolve the whole concept and then the activation of, I don't become the character lives within.
Right.
And so I got a chance to see the combination of the two and the power when the two came together. And so I had to give him credit for that. And it, and the common sense of it for me on a creative level. And so I told him about that. And he goes, well, what do you do? And I said, I also work for City of New York Parks and Recreation, but I do improv comedy. And he goes like, I love improv comedy. I love sketch comedy. And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, I would, oh man, if I could do sketch comedy. So keep in mind, starting with sketch comedy. Okay. I'll just say that.
Yep.
Love improv, love sketch comedy. And he goes, maybe one day we'll work together. And I looked at him and I said, I really hope you're not patronizing me because I wouldn't appreciate that. So when I say that I can use the Force, it is something and it is a power within me. I'm already being led with all of these clues, all of these things, all of these experiences that are completely opening up and validating my experience thus far. How they validate that experience that I haven't even had yet is here. And so when you say something like that, I hope you're not being flippant. Because when I tell you I can use the Force to have that happen because of our energies coming together this way and having this experience and being able to talk to Mark Hamill, not Luke Skywalker, and Debra Wilson this way. I'm telling you, with that energy, I can use the Force to meld those two energies together because where there's a kinship here that you haven't yet to explore within us. And he goes, do it. I said, are you serious? He goes, do it. I want to see that happen. Okay. Now, cut to, that was in New York.
Right.
Cut to years and years and years and years and years and years later. I book Mad TV. I come out here, ask the producers. They say no. Phil Lamar, who's also a prolific voiceover actor and and a friend and someone I was like a brother to me and who I absolutely adore and love. Big shout out to Phil Lamar.
Yeah, he's amazing. Please. Yeah, he's fantastic.
He's walking out of his dressing room as I'm coming out of mine, a Friday night after a live show. He goes, you know, Mark Hamill's going to be at the Universal City Walk. We have a Universal Studios. Before you go in, there's this giant thoroughfare. You walk this thoroughfare, they've got restaurants and stores and shops and movie theater. It's like a giant outdoor mall before you get to the entrance of Universal Studios in Hollywood. And it's called a Universal City Walk. He said, you know, Mark Hamill is going to be at Universal City Walk signing his latest his animated series, The Black Pearl, on Dark Horse Comics. Connection, all these connections. Phil Lamar is a comic book fanatic.
Right.
Or at least was when I knew him. That way, back in Mad TV days. He knew, he told me, prior to that, my degree of separation from Mark Hamill at that point was because of Fox going, listen, this show's doing well. We're going to do some promos. We're going to get Fox to get you on shows and things like that. A talk show. So we're going to have you do the talk show. And it was all like Fox talk shows and people who were coming up doing talk shows. And they said, we booked you on this talk show, but they want to do a pre-interview. Every pre-interview always begins with Mark Hamill. It begins with Star Wars. I tell them about that and they go, what we're going to do is we're going to surprise her before when she comes on the show. We're going to have Mark Hamill here. Mark Hamill could not make it that day, but they said, listen, can we do a call in? He says, absolutely. They said, in the meantime, can we send a messenger over to your place and have you sign a Star Wars Monopoly set for her? And he said, oh, absolutely. Debra Wilson from Mad TV? Yeah, absolutely. Didn't remember who it was. Just knew it was a sketch comedy show. And he went, I like that show.
Yep.
Signed it to me. One of the writers came out as Chewbacca and gave it to me. And I said, I'm a degree of separation from Mark Hamill because he was supposed to be on the show. And now I have something that he touched again while I'm here doing this thing.
Right. Yep.
So I said, all right, you know what? And by that time, we were already in our second to third season of the show.
Okay.
So the show had started steamrolling.
Right.
So I go, well, you know what? I'm going to go to Universal City Walk and I will wait in line as long as it takes to just say thank you and remind him.
Right.
In the meantime, while this was happening, weeks prior to me, Phil Lamar, board, everything else, weeks prior to, the producer said, you know what? We will have Mark Hamill on. They went to his agency or management or whoever, his reps. His reps said no. They never told him because they thought, you're no Saturday Night Live. It's not going to do his career any differently if he's on your show. If it's going to boost his career, yeah, it's not. Right. So they had no idea and they didn't care. So they never told him. So As that's happening, the Force is still going forward. So I go the next day, which is a Saturday, to Universal City Walk. I wait in line. And what happens is they're already signed Forcefully Yours. He always does Forcefully Yours, Mark Hamill. Forcefully Yours, Mark Hamill. All of the comic books have already been signed. What he does is he has them in stacks. You walk up, he goes, "Hi, what's your name?" He signs it. And if you want, for extra money, you take that. Someone takes a Polaroid. While he's sitting and you're standing, he's handing you the comic book. So he goes to get some more comic books and goes, "Hi, what's your name?" Same thing. Goes to get more comic books. "Hi, what's your name?" And he just signs to such and such, to such and such, because again, Forcefully Yours is already on there. And he wrote that himself. They're not printed.
Right.
I finally get to the front. He pulls up a comic book and goes, "Hi, what's your name?" "Debra Wilson." "Oh my God, wow. Debra Wilson, Mad TV. I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, how cool to meet you. You guys are really funny. I love that sketch when you guys did. I love that sketch when you hit." And as I'm listening to him, I realize he has no idea. So I said, "May I tell you something?" "Absolutely. Do you remember years ago in New York, there was a young Black woman, also dreadlocks, a little bit younger than mine, who got to you at the who you met at the Warner Brothers studio store. You were signing your stills as the Joker for Batman the Animated Series." Goes, "Yeah." And then I think she got hysterical, if you recall. I don't think that many people got hysterical that day, but on this day, when however long we were there, she got hysterical and goes, and I sat her down. And then we talked. I said, Wow. And she said she could use the Force to will you into her life. And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "Too bad you don't want to do the show. That would have been the epitome of it. We would love to have you on Mad TV, but you know, I know you didn't want to do it. I'm sorry about that." He goes, "What are you talking about?" See, there goes the dark side.
Yep.
And he goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, you were offered to do Mad TV. You're going to do like a Miss Swan sketch and a Funky Walker Dirty Talker with the Phil Lamar." And he goes, "I didn't know anything about this." He pulls out a piece of paper, personal phone number. Personal phone number. "Here, give those to your producers. I'm doing the show."
Oh, amazing.
"I'm doing the show. And keep my number. Keep my number too." Okay. And so he ends up doing the show. They didn't write me in any fucking sketches.
Of course
here's
not.
The deal, though. But here's the deal. They said, "You know what? We're going to use Debra Wilson as a character that I'd done whenever we did short films called Coco and LeBlanc." It was like two cops. One was black with a big black afro. One was white with a big white afro. And that was Mary Scheer. Props to Mary Scheer. Brilliant writer and actress and voiceover. Anyway, they took that character because Funky Walker Dirty Talker, who was Phil Lamar, was a 1970s guy. And what they would do is they would say these sexy things in different ways, like, "Baby, I want to sit in your couch and, you know, put an indentation in it," or whatever. It was like, you know, "Baby, I want to peel your banana and slice you up." You know, all these things that were sexy, but kind of 70s.
Right.
And so they said, but Debra's character, Coco Latet, is from the 70s with that big afro. It's going to work perfectly. Now, the days before that, we had film students from either USC or UCLA there, and we had live rehearsals. I wasn't in those live rehearsals, but Mark Hamill was for the Swan sketches. The Swan, Alex Borstein. Big up to Alex Borstein.
Yeah, amazing. Family Guy now. Yep. Oh, I love her. Yep.
Are you kidding me? And 2 Emmys, not one, but 2 Emmys for the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So props up to my sister, the beautiful and amazing Alex Borstein. So I'm telling these UCLA students, Pretty much what I've told you, smaller in a nutshell. And standing behind me, who's coming up, who had finished the rehearsal, is Mark Hamill. Now, here we are, live show.
Right.
Mark Hamill's on one side of the stage. I'm on the other. We asked the audience to quiet down. AJ Johnson, who was the stage manager at the time, goes, okay, and when you don't count down 1 and 0. You just go in 5, 4, 3, 2. In your head, you're supposed to go 1, 0, and then it begins.
Yep.
So Mark Hamill's on one side, I'm on the other is Coco Letet. And in that quiet moment, everything hit hard for me. From New York to being in the show that's having this meteoric rise, to having it come true, it was too overwhelming. Because even though you say that part of you has this pompousness, part of you has this desire and drive to prove something, so your ego is involved. And my ego was humbled in that moment because I know God, the force, made that happen. Every small thing, Phil Lamar coming out of his dressing room and me coming into him, I never would have known had I passed him. I never would have known if I had left earlier or he had left earlier.
Right.
I didn't even know about the producers asking and finding out and then them saying no.
Right.
I found out later. And so me having that information, everything, him saying back then, love sketch comedy and improv. Yeah, I love sketch comedy and improv. Would love to do that with you.
Yep.
Because that's all I was doing at the time. I was doing some theater, but primarily it was improv, live improv, because that was a big thing because you can have stand-ups before and after. People love stand-up comedy. You throw some improv in the middle, you got a fucking show. So that was the primary basis of what I was doing in the entertainment industry. You feel me?
Yep.
So for him to go improv sketch, would love to. Mad TV, improv sketch.
All comes together.
All
Everything.
comes together.
Every single step.
Thus,
every bit of it.
Mark Hamill has been willed into my
That's amazing.
Absolutely amazing.
What an amazing story. I love that story. And you know what I love about that too is just we've all heard as Star Wars fans that Mark is just the greatest guy. And that's just, I love that every step of that story, he was just the sweetest guy that everybody expects and believes he is, because that's who he is, right? He's
kind, accessible, warm, warm-hearted, friendly, thoughtful, considerate, and a gentleman.
Absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, he is.
Wow. And you have been amazing, Debra. We've taken an hour of your time, and this has been, I have to say,
so
honestly,
fun.
This has been so much fun. I saw with Nick, we've been just captivated listening to your stories. This has been fantastic. We can't wait to see you again as Cere Junda in Survivor, which is hitting on March 17th, I believe. And we're going to keep in touch with you because we're going to want to get you back on. And I know I can tell there's piles of stories that I'm just going to sit here and just stare and listen.
And don't forget, that's not my only Star Wars thing, because Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, in the Oculus.
That's right.
I am Tara Rashin. Tara Rashin is an outlaw character, and Tales from the Galaxy says if you have an Oculus, it's called the Tales from the Galaxy Edge is an experience. It's not just a story. It's not just a video game.
Yes.
And I play Tara Rashin in that, and I've done a lot of stories. In fact, Ryan Johnson.
Yes.
If you see Star Wars: The Last Jedi, the very last one, at one point Rey is on this desert planet where they're celebrating.
Yep.
And this little creature comes up to her and starts talking to
Nandi Gima.
Nambi Gima.
That's the character's name. Yep.
And as I'm doing ADR and looping, they're asking people to variously come up, and it's all gibberish, but I like to create language that sounds like a language. And so I did for her, and I found this voice for her. And Ryan Johnson was there, goes, yeah, I like that. I like that. And thus I became Nambi Gima. Now, a friend of mine goes, I saw it went to the movies. Goes, Debra, you're in the main cast. No, I'm not. I didn't do anything that's the main cast. Yeah, your name is in the main cast. I said, no, if you look at ADR and looping, that's where my name would be. He goes, I know what I'm talking about. Your name is in the main cast. Nambi Gima, you're a little alien. You gave breeds to Ray.
Yep.
Right. But that's not a main character. Well, your name is in the main cast.
Yes, it is.
Name was in the main cast.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I've
So
done
cool.
a lot of other looping and ADR and voice replacement on other ones.
You did a
on a
character,
lot of
didn't you?
Star
Did a
Wars.
character for Squadrons as well? The
Yes,
fighter
and
video
Star
game.
Wars, a solo story.
Yes, that's right.
What were you?
I've done voices in that too. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
been pretty amazing. So I'm very grateful to be a part of the Disney universe and most definitely the Star Wars universe, and how they're closely tied together also as well is no
Yep.
stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely. Well, we
No,
have
no stretch.
we have we do an annual charity event. It's coming up at the end of the year. Why don't we reach out to you then? And just I want to hear more of that stuff. If you join us, that would be fantastic for that. I would love that. And I definitely want to talk to you after I get a chance to play Jedi Fallen Order 2 Survivor. Can't wait to revisit you there.
Yeah.
Are you online anywhere where people can follow
Believe
you?
it or not, I'm not on any social media.
I was looking for you. I
Good for
could not
you.
find you.
You
Good for you.
won't find me on any social
Would
media.
you-
The only thing I do on social media is Cameo.
Right.
So
So
you can find me on Cameo. But other
Perfect.
than that, because I connect with fans, and I always tell people, I said it doesn't have to be about money on Cameo. Sometimes people send me just messages. It's like, hi, I just wanted to say hi. Is it really you? I just wanted to say, and so I will connect with you on Cameo,
That's
where you don't
awesome.
have to pay anything if you want. If you just want to send a message and say hi, I answer everybody back.
That's amazing. Which is probably
Yeah.
explains why you're so happy. You stay away from
Yeah.
social media.
when last thing, when Mad TV
Yeah.
started happening and they had a website, it was like all the actors could, the cast members can do their own like little thing in their pods, and I wanted to do like a Q&A thing or an advice column. And
Right.
Fox was like, we want to make sure that legally we have to disavow anything you say to people. That it's not, And I was like, oh no, it's not going to be giving advice on people who are mental health issues.
Right.
I said, and I was always the oldest in the cast, and even when I left, I was always the oldest. There was no one who came onto the show who was older than me. I always considered myself the matriarch. And so I said, no, it was nothing like that. So I was writing people back, and I realized I couldn't keep up with the volume. So I decided to buy, at the time when cassette tapes were really popular still, you can buy them in bulk, especially in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry. You can either buy them in 15 minutes or 30 minutes or hour or 90-minute tapes.
Right.
And I would buy 15-minute cassette tapes. They were just 15 minutes on a cassette tape. And instead of trying to write it all out, which I was doing, and because I averaged 3 pages per person.
Wow.
And I was like, I can't keep up with this and work. So I decided to put my feelings and thoughts and the things that they were asking about on cassette tape. And I did that along with a picture. And I've had people come to me and find me on Cameo and say, that's what you did. I remember you doing
Oh, wow.
that. Yeah,
That's
from those
wonderful.
many years ago. And that's over 20 years ago. So it's
Yeah.
just really been very wonderful to have people say they were influenced by that and continue to influence me in saying, stay connected to that truth, stay connected to your heart, stay connected to the Force, because the Force will always be with you. Always.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Deborah. This has been great, and we will definitely want to talk to you again. This was awesome. Could I get you to read just a little bumper for the show?
Sure.
If I just pop it up here on the screen. Hang on a second. That way. Oh, man, this was so much fun. This was amazing. There you go. Yeah, if you could maybe hit those lines, that would be awesome.
Oh, wait. Let me see. Wait.
This is the Streaming Star Wars Network. You're listening
Right.
to...
But I don't have my glasses on, and it's very, very tiny because I'm on my phone.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. This is the Streaming Star Wars Network. You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
That's it.
You want me to introduce myself as name or just to say this?
Yeah, no, introduce yourself. That'd be great.
Yep.
Hey, everybody. This is Debra Wilson, a.k.a. Cere Junda from Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and Star Wars Jedi Survivor. This is the Streaming Star Wars Network. You are listening to Around the Galaxy, and may the Force be with you.
Yes. Amazing. Love it. Love it. This I'm gonna
So
hit
good.
I'm gonna hit end here real quick. And
Do you have any Patreons on? Because I want to be